Even tied the knot with Naomi when he was just 23 years old. In the years that followed, they were blessed with a son and a daughter who were now in their final year of high school. Naomi inherited a cozy little apartment in a residential area from her grandmother. Although the couple already had their own place, Naomi couldn't bring herself to part with the old apartment, which held precious memories of her childhood. Even suggested renting it out, albeit hesitantly, and after much consideration, Naomi reluctantly agreed. She meticulously and painstakingly searched for the perfect tenant, a process that made Evan increasingly anxious every time Naomi brought it up. He understood her reluctance to let go, but fate intervened unexpectedly. Turns out, a colleague of their son was in urgent need of a place to stay. And coincidentally, it was in the same neighborhood as Naomi's grandmother's apartment. Naomi finally agreed to rent it out to him. When Naomi met the prospective tenant for the first time, she was pleasantly surprised by his appearance. Ryder, a tall, slender man with blonde hair, greeted her with a warm smile that instantly put Naomi at ease. He mentioned that he had recently gone through a divorce and had left his former home for his ex-wife and kids. Naomi didn't delve into the details of his separation, but she enjoyed their conversation, which effortlessly passed the time. A week later, Naomi noticed several missed calls from an unfamiliar number on her phone. When she dialed back, she instantly recognized Ryder's voice. Worriedly, she asked, "Has something happened at your end? Did you experience some sort of water damage?" The listener chuckled. Nah, that's cool. Wanna grab coffee with me?" The inquiry caught her off guard. Without hesitation, the woman, all this time, unintentionally wandered back to her thoughts about the tenant, recalling his manner of speech and the sound of his laughter. After many years, long-forgotten emotions began to stir within her. Naomi, of course, agreed to the rendezvous. On the down low from Evan, she often slipped away from work to have lunch with Ryder. He was the complete opposite of her husband, thus attracting her. The hour they spent together seemed to fly by for the woman. "Perhaps next time, I can swing by and see how you're settling in," she suggested as their latest encounter drew to a close. Ryder smirked mischievously. That'd be rad. To Evan's surprise, his wife started coming home from the office later than usual. Initially, she explained that a few colleagues had been let go, leaving the remaining staff, including herself, to pick up the slack. Later, she revealed that their company was amidst a challenging period of financial reporting. Evan, ever trusting and kind-hearted, took Naomi's explanations at face value. His wife had always been truthful. The thought of infidelity had never crossed his mind, especially not after years of a loving marriage. With a growing sense of unease, he gently probed her about the late nights, yet her responses were convincing enough to leave no shadow of doubt, and their discussions seemed to dissolve into thin air. One day, Evan caught a glimpse of Ryder's text messages on Naomi's phone, but couldn't make out the details. "Is the renter moving out? Or did something happen to him?" he inquired, feigning nonchalance. "He probably got a reduction on his rent," Naomi replied nonchalantly as she shrugged her shoulders. Meanwhile, her phone continued to buzz with notifications. Naomi sensed the growing rift between her and her husband, yet the overwhelming joy she felt clouded her judgment, hindering her from rational thought. She endeavored to maintain her role as a devoted wife and mother, albeit with little success. Her attentions were clearly elsewhere. Amidst a gathering with friends, Evan unveiled his deep-seated worries about his wife's fidelity. "So what led you to suspect an affair?" a friend probed. Pouring out his heart, Evan recounted the suspicions and unease that had been festering within him for ages. Exhausted from stewing in his chaotic thoughts daily, he found solace in confiding in anyone willing to listen. His friends echoed his darkest suspicions, and one suggested he should covertly install a tracking app onto his wife's phone. Evan was taken with the idea. Without Naomi's knowledge, he installed a spy app on her mobile device. His wait was brief. Merely days later, Naomi mentioned she'd be late home again, covering for a sick colleague. Once their conversation wrapped up, Evan immediately launched the tracking app. The icon representing Naomi's phone was shifting locations on the map. Initially, Ivan was puzzled by the movement, but it soon dawned on him that his wife was en route to her grandmother's old apartment. Snatching the backup keys from the nightstand, he dashed out toward the same destination. Pausing at a red light, Ivan noticed that the icon had halted. Naomi had arrived. When the light flicked to green, he sped off, disregarding the speed limits entirely. The building that had been Naomi's grandmother's abode was noticeably aged, lacking any sort of lift. With a sense of dread, Ivan forced himself up to the 5th floor, each step heavier than the last, uncertain of the scene that would greet him. Upon reaching the door, Ivan found he didn't even need the keys. He turned the knob, and the door swung open quietly. An all-too-familiar fragrance wafted towards him. It was Naomi's perfume. Hanging right by the entry, her fur coat permeated the air with its scent. Ivan felt a suppressive silence envelop the space, amplifying the pounding in his skull from the ascent. Driven by some primal instinct, he moved toward the bedroom, his legs feeling as though chains were tethered to them, dragging him back with each step. The sight that greeted him was gut-wrenching. His wife, Naomi, and their tenant, Ryder, in bed, both looking utterly shocked at his sudden appearance. A suffocating stillness filled the room. "Why are you here?" Naomi managed to utter. "I came to bring you back," Ivan replied tersely. "Get ready." In their many years together, it was unprecedented for her to witness her husband suffused with such fury, despondence, and sorrow all at once. Naomi, somewhat fearful, hesitated to emerge from beneath the quilt. Uncertain of how Ivan might react in such a turbulent state, she nonetheless realized she had no other option. "Pack," Ivan commanded once more, barely holding himself on the brink of composure. A firestorm of rage blazed within him. He felt so tightly wound that it seemed striking a single match might set him off in a furious outburst. Once she was fully clothed, he firmly escorted her from the flat by the nape of her neck, declaring they would have their discussion in the car downstairs. Naomi offered no excuses, sought no mercy. She laid bare the truth, confessing without a hint of remorse that what transpired had rekindled a spark of vitality within her. Ivan snorted with disdain upon hearing that. While he did admire her for not groveling in front of him with crocodile tears and pleading for forgiveness, in every other way, she had become utterly repulsive to him. Just looking at her was more than he could endure. The pair remained silent for several months. Naomi made several tentative efforts to strike up a conversation with Ivan, but he would just turn away and walk off without a word. Throughout this period, he genuinely believed he could forgive his wife and keep living as a typical family for the children's sake. But deep down, there was only one emotion left towards the woman he once adored: revulsion. He resolved to file for divorce 3 months following the incident. Naomi didn't contest it. The kids updated their dad on how their mom's life unfolded post-divorce. Even found out Naomi had moved in with Ryder. But at some point, her new partner embarked on a drinking spree. That's when it became clear why things hadn't worked out with Ryder's first wife. She simply couldn't bear living with a husband who was perpetually inebriated for months on end. After a couple of years of this, Naomi's spirit broke, and she parted ways with him, staying on in the same old apartment her grandmother owned. The children grew up and went to study at the university. Loneliness gripped the woman, sometimes so strong that she wanted to howl at the moon in despair.